Welcome to Deeply Rested, the podcast that helps people doing good work in the world take incredibly good care of themselves. I'm your host, retired therapist and disillusioned business coach, Megan Megginson. I'm on a mission to help people like you unlearn the rules that keep you trapped in self-doubt so that you can recover from burnout and finally become deeply rested. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure to subscribe to this podcast and join our weekly newsletter at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. Now, it's time for the show. Do you ever feel like you're building your business for somebody else? Many entrepreneurs, especially healers, are taught that their businesses should be blank slates. In other words, that their businesses should be boring. I'm calling BS on that outdated nonsense. If you want to avoid burnout, you must make your business a true reflection of you. Who better to speak on this topic than the queen of getting paid to be yourself, Laura Belgray. Laura is an award-winning copywriter, founder of Talking Shrimp, and author of Tough Titties on living your best life when you are the fucking worst. She's written TV spots for clients like NBC, Fandango, and Bravo, and she helps entrepreneurs find words that make buyers go bananas. Her course with Marie Forleo, The Copy Cure, helps you find your voice and sell your anything. This conversation with Laura was originally recorded for my fundraising event, the Rest and Success Code, and I'm really excited to be sharing it with you today because I believe the easiest way to become deeply rested is to start honoring who you truly are by becoming more self-expressed in your business. I truly hope you enjoy this conversation with the one and only Laura Belgray. Hello, I'm your host, Megan Megginson, and I'm here today with the founder of Talking Shrimp, the one and only Laura Belgray. Hi, Laura.
Hello, Megan. Thank you for having me.
I am so excited that you're here. Now, just in case, it's doubtful, but just in case there's anyone listening who doesn't already know you, let's start with your mini bio.
All right.
So Laura Belgray, founder of Talking Shrimp and co-creator of The Copy Cure, is a copywriting expert who helps entrepreneurs find the perfect words to express and sell what they do in a way that gets them paid to be themselves. Through her work with hundreds of clients, including online biggies like Marie Forleo and Amy Porterfield, she's seen firsthand that putting you into your copy and all through your business is pure magic for getting people to love you up, share your ideas, and happily click your buy button. In addition to online types, Laura's list of clients and credits include NBC, Bravo, HBO, TBS, Fandango, and many, many more. So if you watch TV and don't skip the commercials, you've probably seen her words on the air. Laura, that mini bio is so good. It's almost like you get paid to teach people how to do this or something.
You'd think. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, well, before we dive in, I want to start, Laura, by sharing a story with you about how I came to know you. My Laura origin story.
This is my favorite kind of story. Sweet.
Okay, here it is. So, Laura, about 3 years ago, I heard you on a podcast. I'll tell you what podcast later because I actually hate the person who hosts this podcast. Really, it drives me nuts.
Can't wait to hear.
And I was about to unsubscribe from his podcast, and your picture popped up, and it said something about get paid to be yourself. I was like, well, that sounds interesting. I'll give it one more listen before I throw this guy in the trash. And so I start listening to your episode. At the time, I was drowning in my own burnout. I mean, I was seriously about an inch away from throwing my business in the garbage can. I had spent months trying to figure out what wasn't working, and I had kind of solved all of the obvious culprits. I was working too much. I was undercharging. I was not asking for help, blah, blah, blah. I had fixed all of that, and I still felt terrible. None of those changes were getting at the core of whatever was not working for me, and I couldn't figure out what it was. And then Laura Belgray entered my earbuds. So, Laura, I listened to this conversation that you had about getting paid to be yourself. I was taking a walk through my neighborhood at the time. And by the time I got home, I was a changed woman. I was a different human being. I mean, and it was a legitimate movie moment too, because I was walking, I live in Portland, I was walking down the street with my raincoat on. It was like drizzling and overcast. And as I'm listening to your episode, the clouds are parting, like the sun starts shining through. I swear to God, like the Rudy theme song started playing in the background. It was just like something was happening. And I went inside and I went to my husband and I was just like, I think I've got it. Like I think I just figured it out. Like the root of my struggle with burnout doesn't have anything to do anymore with how I'm working. The problem is that this business isn't a reflection of me. I'm building this for somebody else and it's killing me. I'm miserable. Mm-hmm. So I changed everything from that moment forward, and like magic, everything started getting better. So Laura, you have been such an inspiration to me, and I am so excited and honored to be having this conversation with you today. So thank you.
Oh my gosh. Thank you so much. That story is, first of all, touching for me and a huge honor, and also really valuable in terms of just reminding me that what I have to say is worth saying. Because sometimes we forget that until we hear it reflected back to us from somebody who it made a difference for. So yes. I'm curious what I said. Are you going to reveal that?
Well, I think it was just this essence of get paid to be yourself. Like stop running your business in a way that works for other people. Like stop like speaking a message that like isn't a true reflection of your personality or of who you are. And part of what I've done is like I've taken what I learned from you, I applied it to my own business. And now as a business coach, it's a big part of my method, right? So I help entrepreneurs burnout proof their businesses using a 5-step framework. And one of those steps is all about making your business a true reflection of you in all of the ways, right? Your needs, your interests, your personality. And what I'm discovering is that this transition is really challenging for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's this total mindset shift. And some people, like, I feel like that day I was ready to hear what you had to say and it just clicked and I was able to do it really quickly and turn things around. But for many people, it feels like it's a process that takes a long time. So I'm curious today to dive in and start this conversation to hear about your own journey from, being in the TV world, working for other people, to moving into talking shrimp, getting paid to be yourself. I want to understand what that journey was like for you. So let's start there. Tell me more about what your career was like pre-talking shrimp. What did you love about it? Feel free to name drop if you want, because that's always fun. And then how did you know when this flashy career in TV was no longer working for you?
So, I mean, this journey takes us way back to the early 90s. I'll start in the mid 90s when I worked in the first place that was truly corporate. And that was a magazine. And you were expected to be corporate there, and I couldn't do it. First of all, I couldn't get there on time. I just could not. And my boss hated me and hated that. And she would call me at the stroke of 9 a.m. every morning and leave a message saying like, "Hey, Laura, it's, I'm not going to call her real name. It's Heather. Hi, Laura, it's Heather. Just checking to see if you're there. I guess you're not." And so every morning there was a gotcha waiting for me. And I was that obnoxious age where you wear midriff t-shirts. So again, it was the 90s. And little tight things. And my belly button was always showing. And the work that I did was rarely satisfactory to her because she always said, this is too casual. This is too, maybe if this were something for Nickelodeon, but it's not right for our audience. It needs to be up here. And she would wave her hand over her head, which is the signal for out over my head. But she would always say, it needs to be up here. It needs to be elegant. And I'm talking like that because she always talked like she had a cold. It really needs to be elegant. And so she didn't like any of my ideas. She didn't like the voice that I wrote in. She made me, kind of as a punishment for being late, she made me stay late on Fridays, which were supposed to be summer hours, but I blew it with my summer hours, and she made me stay late and write a newsletter, an internal newsletter that was for the sales team. It was about like what's happening in, at the magazine. And I was really subversive with that. I would write kind of dirty jokes into it that I knew she wouldn't spot, and innuendos and stuff like that. And people loved it. So that was a little taste of being me.
That was your first newsletter.
It was my first newsletter, and I hadn't really thought about it until I found that in a drawer up at my mom's place, which was in my childhood bedroom. I have a drawer full of the stuff that I wrote back then, and I was like, those were pretty good, really kind of subversive. And I went from there. So she said that, this would be great if it were a Nickelodeon piece. And then I ended up going to Nickelodeon by way of VH1, a couple of other places. But when I heard that writing promos, which are those ads for the actual network, like those little things in between the commercials. When I heard that was a job, I was like, oh my God, I had no idea that was a job. I need to have that job. And I just had great timing, got in the door. Someone hooked me up with an interview with somebody who was in charge of promos at VH1, and she assigned me promos. And by the way, this is a fun little thing. I didn't have a reel to show her. I'd never written a promo before. What I did have was some work that I had been doing in the meantime, like in between jobs. Someone from the first magazine I worked at founded an internet startup. Nobody had any idea what that was or what that meant. Like, what is the internet for? We don't know. But he had a bulletin board, a forum. This is like an early version. This was before Facebook. It was a bulletin board. It was a place where people left messages. And I mean, I guess kind of like Reddit is, right? And so he hired me to be a ringer, to pretend that it was really active in there and just post stuff. So I was a normal user, a member, except I was getting paid. I was a bot. Yeah. So I wrote whatever I wanted. I wrote about 90210 and Melrose Place and, Crazy Kimberly's wig and all that stuff. And so I printed out all my writing for this place called The Transom from this bulletin board, and gave it to the person at VH1. And she was like, oh, this is funny. Okay, I'll hire you to write a promo. So again, that was me being myself and getting a job by being myself. And so I started writing promos there, and that got me into, I also wrote countdown scripts for VH1, those top 20 countdowns, top 10 countdowns. So I wrote these for Moon Unit Zappa, who was Frank Zappa's daughter, and she created the character of Valley Girl in the song Valley Girl. And so she was the VJ that I wrote for. And so I wrote those, and I wrote promos, and then I got in the door at Nickelodeon. And then from there, Nick at Night, which was the holy grail, like the ultimate place to write promos. I knew I loved their promos before I knew what promos were. I watched a lot of Nick at Night at home, and I was like, I love those little things that they run on the air, those little commercials for the shows. And so I got in the door there, and I got to write my first promo there, and it was amazing. It's like, this is what I'm meant to be doing. I watch a ton of TV. This is the first place, probably the first and last time that people would come and go at work and see me there after hours and say, do you ever sleep or do you ever go home? Because I would sit there watching every episode. Maybe you only needed to watch 5 episodes of a show to write a promo, but I would watch all 180. Every episode of Dragnet.
You were binging before binging was cool.
It's true. Before there
Yeah.
was a word for it. I mean, binging was, just for drugs and Cheetos. And yeah, I was binging my way through the shows, and I loved what I was doing. It was incredible. Like, I'm getting paid to watch TV and then write these little things. And I loved writing the little things. I always wanted to do something with writing and something in TV, but I didn't feel like I had it in me to write a whole script or to write a whole novel, or I didn't feel like stories came to me, but I did feel like little things came to me.
Yeah.
And so I loved writing promos, and I got to work with like classic TV celebrities. I mean, I taught Sherman Hemsley, who played George Jefferson on The Jeffersons. I taught him how to moonwalk backstage on the set. I worked with Roseanne, who was as loony as they come.
I can see that.
Worked with Adam West, the original Batman, who whispered into my ear, "I'll see you." He whispered, "I'll see you in the Batcave."
Oh, did
I think
he?
he was flirting. He did not.
Oh.
I've always liked older men, but that was a little too old. I was like,
we all have our limits.
70s. Yeah, that was he went beyond mine. So I got to work with a lot of like, celebrity or people who would become celebrities, like Cheryl Hines from Larry from Curb Your Enthusiasm. Worked with her before that show. Yeah, she was great. So it was great for a long time, but it was an easy place to be complacent. And we would see older people. I mean, people we thought were ancient. They were like maybe in their 40s, working there, producing spots and coming and going. And we would make vows to each other, like, promise me if I'm still doing this when I'm that age, you'll kill me, just shoot me. And we promised we wouldn't be that, and that we would do something bigger. And I knew that I knew that this shouldn't be the final stop. Like, even, this doesn't matter so much. It shouldn't matter. But when I heard somebody say promos are the lowest form of entertainment, and that was a little bit of a downer. I was like, screw you. But still felt like, well, it's not, I'm not really creating a legacy. Even if people in promos will still remember certain promos from back in the day, it's not, going to change anybody's life. And I would not have left if I hadn't, well, first of all, if I hadn't been let go from my biggest contract. It was a 6-figure contract, and I was sitting pretty in 2010. And I already had a foot in the online world, but a reluctant one. I didn't really think that I wanted to go in that direction. I was like, these people are all coaches, and they're all woo-woo, and they're all
not for me.
Not for me. And the marketing was cheesy, and a lot of yellow highlighter stuff back then. And I didn't see anyone who I wanted to be. And TV was way cooler. I was like, TV and entertainment is so much cooler than this. So I wasn't planning to go in that direction. But I got let go from my biggest contract in 2010. And I had other clients, some freelance clients in the TV world. But I started to make up that money. I was like, I've got to find a way to make up that money. So I started taking private clients, and I posted copywriting clients in the entrepreneur world. I had a few here and there, but I didn't have any evidence on my website that I provided any services for them. So I put services on my website, and might have let my tiny list know that I was offering them. But people started taking me up on them, and I started building a pretty good sized practice from those people and getting booked up. And someone had told me, a friend had told me, who was in the entrepreneur world, she said, don't take entrepreneurs as clients. Don't get into this world. She's like, they're so cheap. They have no money. Don't do it. And I started to find that they had way more money to spend than anyone in TV. In TV, there was absolutely a ceiling. And these people are willing to pay for, if they perceive you as the best, they are willing to pay. But I think that, so it wasn't, it was definitely the catalyzing incident was getting let go from my contract. But as I segued into this world, I realized I had a chance to be more myself and express myself and in my voice. I was writing for the network's voice before that. And I knew I had more to say. I just didn't know where to put that. Like, what would I do with that? And so I started blogging. I didn't sell anything through my blog. It had nothing to do with copywriting. I just told stories, but people liked them.
Loved them. Yeah.
And people loved them and considered those stories copy. And they would say, I love your copy. Will you write copy for me? So it worked. They actually did function. It functioned as content marketing, even though it wasn't designed that way at all and broke all the rules of marketing.
You sort of stumbled into being yourself and then having people wanting to pay you for more of that.
Yes.
Yeah. Happy
exactly.
accident.
Right.
Well,
go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, reflecting on the TV career for a minute, like what I'm thinking as I'm listening to you is this really great reminder that being yourself, getting paid to be yourself, is going to look drastically different just depending on what stage of life you're in. And at that stage in your life, writing promos for, Nick at Night and VH1, like that was an expression of you and that was working for you. And then you kind of outgrew that and it was time to be you in a more elevated way. And I just think that's such a good reminder for all of us that there isn't your business doesn't look one way when you're being yourself. It could look different ways throughout your entire life. And I think that's part of what's so engaging about your story is hearing how you have found these avenues to be yourself in different settings and different situations.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Something no one else has pointed out before. So I love that.
There you go. You're welcome.
Sure.
I'll send you my bill after this conversation. Just kidding. Okay. So I love actually this. I'm just imagining being you in this moment. You're just writing these stories, writing these blog posts, and then people are like, hey, I'll pay you to do that for me. How did that feel for you?
It felt great. And it was kind of a evidence of that it works. Like everybody talks about selling to strangers on the internet. And this wasn't quite it. It wasn't passive income. It wasn't like having a product that somebody bought and then
while you were sleeping
was done.
Yeah.
Right. I still had to fulfill something when they paid me, but it was pretty exciting. And it felt a little bit like, wow, the sky's the limit.
Yeah.
You can really, I can keep charging more and I can keep taking clients and I can take as many clients as I can. And after a while that led to total burnout. I was like, I can't take so many clients. I can't do this all day long.
Being yourself has limits.
Yes. And I wouldn't say that in the work that I did with those clients, in a way it was getting paid to be me, but it wasn't quite there yet. Yeah. I still, whenever I thought of the expression paid to be me, I felt like I'm not there. Like that's the dream.
Because you were still writing in their voices?
Yeah, I was still writing in their voices. I was certainly expressing a talent of mine and helping them. And that was gratifying. And when I wrote something for them that they loved, I felt like, that sometimes it was in my voice for them. But it still wasn't entirely like, this isn't what I'd be writing if I were if another thought experiment that I always played and I still do is, would I do this if I didn't need a buck? If I did not need to earn a living, would I still be doing this? And when it came to helping private clients or helping any clients, the answer became no, not really. Maybe once in a while, but I'd probably do it for free and only with once in a blue moon and a client who I really liked. And it was just easy to sit down with and no struggle at all. No thought, in terms of in my head, no, it would just come naturally. If I looked at someone's copy and was like, I know exactly what to do there. I would do that maybe for free.
Yeah.
If I didn't have to make a living. But when it comes to writing emails and writing my own stuff, that's the part that I've always felt like, well, I would do this anyway. I'm actually glad that I have to make money and that I like making money because that has pushed me to do a lot more writing than I normally would. And now I feel like, okay, this is, I would absolutely keep doing this even if I won the lottery.
And that feels like such a good litmus test.
Yeah.
Right. Of like, ask yourself that question. If I actually won the lottery and didn't have to work another day in my life for money, would I keep doing my work the way I'm doing it now? Would I do it at all? Like, would it be work? Would it be free? I mean, just like sitting with the answer to that question, I think reveals a lot of really helpful information about where you can go.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And there's still things that I do, parts of my business that I do really in order to market it that I would not do. I wouldn't bother with if I won the lottery. I wouldn't, like Instagram, I'd post here and there when I felt like it, a picture I liked.
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't sit there and make the quote cards, which I love making, but it becomes exhausting. Like,
right. Well, you don't want to have to make them.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you stumble on something extra witty, it's actually like a joyful exercise to put it into a graphic and then post it on Facebook or Instagram, wherever it goes. But yeah, it's that sense of have to will creep in sometimes. I mean, a little sense of have to is inevitable if you're trying to make money. Yes. But I feel like it's the balance, right? If I need way more want to do and excited to do and way less have to do.
Yeah.
And like, if I can strike that balance in a way that feels authentic, I'm in a good place. Like I'm going to enjoy this work. I'm less likely to burn out. Does that seem right to you?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And
go ahead. You go ahead.
No, I was going to talk about, the idea everyone's like, go outside your comfort zone. None of the magic happens in your comfort zone. And I think that is half bullshit. I think it is true that you need to go outside your comfort zone. And I do that really in service of my business growing and what I need to do for it to grow and scale. And I'm glad that I do. I'm glad that I have that imperative to do that, because otherwise I wouldn't push myself. And there a lot of magic certainly does happen from doing that. But I like to think of it as bringing things into my comfort zone rather than going outside my comfort zone. I like to bring things into my comfort zone so that I feel comfortable with them, because to me, that is where all the magic happens, is when you're comfortable, when it feels easy, when it feels natural.
That's such a little nugget of wisdom. Thank you for saying that. And I think another part of that conversation is that, you don't have to want more. You don't have to want to grow. And that's why we're doing this whole summit, right? Like giving people an opportunity to say like when enough is enough for them. And I think, we're so inundated with this message, like get out of your comfort zone, stretch yourself, feel the fear and do it anyways. It's like, what if I'm just fine? Like what if I'm just like making enough money and in this business is like fun, but I'm more engaged in things outside of my life. Like it's okay to be in that place. But if you're in this place like you were in, where you ask yourself, do I want to grow? And the answer was yes. Yeah. Then the question is, okay, how do I challenge myself? How do I hold myself accountable for doing things that felt uncomfortable a week ago? Like, how can I make those just a normal part of my routine now? And that's where like the creativity and the flow really show up for you. Yeah. When things feel easy.
Totally.
So there, I think, are two ways. I mean, at least this is what I've discovered since listening to your podcast episode. I think there are two ways that you can really be yourself in your business. One is around your boundaries, and the other, of course, is your copy. So we're going to talk more about being yourself and your copy in just a minute. But first, I want to talk to you about your boundaries, because I have heard you share some really brilliant examples of how you have shifted your business boundaries to really reflect how you want to show up, like in your life, how you want to show up in your business. I'm thinking like one of the biggest ones for me is your no homework rule.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear, like, tell us about your no homework rule, and are there any other examples that pop up for you of changes that you've made in Talking Shrimp to say like, nope, this is how I'm going to show up, even though it's maybe a little unexpected or not exactly what most people are doing?
Yeah, sure. So the no homework thing, I mean, I always hated homework as a kid. And some people love it. Some people are born students. They love to please. They love to be the best student. It was important to me to get good grades, but I hated homework and I was a procrastinator, and it made my life miserable. And I hated having that feeling anytime as an adult, having an assignment due, because I knew I was going to put it off. And I knew that Sunday or whatever the day before the deadline was going to feel like crap. Every day was going to feel like a Sunday if I had homework. And working for TV,
miserable.
right, miserable. And working for TV clients, I generally had homework. They'd say, give us ideas by Thursday, give us a bunch of scripts by Thursday. And so, the whole week, and especially like Wednesday night was a nightmare. And then I'd be asking for an extension and hating myself. And I felt like, what if I could have a life without that? And so when I started working with private clients, I designed my service so that I didn't have any homework. I said, we're going to work in real time. No, you can't book me for a project. Like, oh, I want you to rewrite my about page. We'll rewrite it together in a 1 hour session or as much as we can. Or if you want to book 3 hours, that'll probably do the trick, but 1 hour might do the trick. And I'm not going to have anything hanging over me. We're going to sit there together and get it done. And that was such a much better way for me to work. Was it what everyone wanted? Absolutely not. If I were the client, I would be like, here are the deliverables. Like, I want, send me this, this, and this. I don't feel like sitting there with you and helping you. But people enjoyed it. People enjoyed the experience. And I was able to mine their voices and their stories and stuff. And it worked out way better. And we wrote great things. So that was one boundary. And then when I decided I didn't want to have clients anymore, that was another boundary, was I not taking client. That was the biggest and I guess boldest one that I've ever set, because I was giving up that whole income stream. That was the main thrust of how I made a living was private clients. And I decided in 2019 that I didn't want clients anymore. And I just took the services down and put them on sort of an archived page that you can look, but you can't have them. And it was such a relief to me. And then their time boundaries, like, I would never take a client before noon. And then I was like, you know what? Noon is a little early. Never before 1 p.m.
Yeah. Why not?
Right. Always between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. or whatever. And it's like, if it interferes with dance, that's a deal breaker. If it interferes with my, I have to take a walk at certain points. Sometimes I would just rearrange things so that it was like not at the nicest time of day. So a lot of time boundaries, and I'm a pain with that. So it's better for me not to have private clients and any I'd like, as much as possible, I've eliminated appointments as well as homework.
Yeah. I mean, there's two things here that stand out to me. One, I mean, you've been a huge inspiration and model for me. And it shouldn't be so shocking, right? But it feels like a slap in the face, like, hey, you don't have to have homework. Like, you don't have to see clients when you don't want to. You don't have to. I mean, there's so much conditioning that says like, you have to show up in this way for this amount of money. And this is how it's going to feel. And this is what you have to do afterwards. And it's just refreshing to see you like shake that off and say, no, I don't. And things can still go great without it. So that alone is worth the cost of admission. And the second piece that feels just really important is, I mean, there's nothing will light a fire under your ass faster than burning the boat when you're on the island.
Right.
And I love these examples. I mean, the first, you didn't burn the boat first, right? This contract, you were fired basically. So,
right.
Like they burned the boat for you and you had to figure some shit out, and you did. And then, but when you took those services pages down, like you burned the boat and I have to figure it out. Like we have to figure out what to do now. And then you did. And I think that's just such a great reminder that there's always something else. There's always some other way to make money. There's always some other way to like shift the rules of your business. You just have to do it and then kind of figure it out afterwards.
Yes. And the beauty of our world of having your own business and running an online business, just running your own business, is that even if you're not really burning the boats, you're putting them away. And
you can always go back to them if things don't work out. Yeah. It's such a good thing.
I always had that in my back pocket. Like if I need to make an extra buck and things aren't going well, I can always just write to my list and say, hey, I have 10 spots open.
Yeah.
And I knew they would fill.
That's such a great, thanks for saying that. I mean, I need more people in my life reflecting that back to me. I think we all need people in our life who can remind us, right? When you're stretching yourself or you're moving into new territory, like, hey, you're not throwing away your skill set. You're not throwing away like the networks that you've spent decades building up in this industry. And if things really go wrong, just email your list and say, I'm taking 10 more clients. Yeah. So it kind of makes it risk free in many ways to make these big pivots. Okay. That's cool. Let's talk about copy.
Yeah.
And I have loved talking about non-copy things with you so far, because I do think you have so much wisdom to provide us. You go beyond copy, I guess. So
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your non-copy wisdom. But let's talk about copy, because I do think I've seen it in my own business. I've seen it in my clients' businesses. When you start writing as yourself, you attract like a whole other caliber of clients to work with you than when you are trying to fit like the plug and play mold. This is how a therapist should write. This is how a coach should write. This is how a copywriter should write. Like when you just throw that out the window and just talk like yourself, it's pretty, you're magnetic, the right people find you. But before we get into that, you said something recently that really stood out to me, because I do think people can get a little confused sometimes about the get paid to be yourself message, right? It's like, well, and this is true, right? If I really got paid to be myself, I would get paid to sit on a beach, watching Netflix on an iPad, drinking margaritas. Like that's what I would get paid to do. That's not what you're saying. No. So I just want to read this quote back for you and like get your thoughts about it, because this is just perfect, right? You said getting paid to be you is not the same as getting paid to exist. It's getting paid to deliver value while being yourself. Yep. It's pretty perfect. Do you want to elaborate on that, or does that sum it up?
I mean, I think you just summed it up, because I'm the same way. Getting paid to exist would mean I watch hours and hours of Real Housewives of New York, maybe a marathon of the old ones too, and eat some ice cream, and then I get a check. That's it.
Oh man,
that would be amazing. I mean, I've come close enough writing TV promos. That was the closest I came to get paid for watching TV. But again, I was providing some value that somebody was willing to pay for. And so, that is the trick, is finding like what expression of yourself are people willing to pay for. And also getting paid to be you is about making your business a 100% expression of you, of your personality, so that it really reflects you, so that you feel like it's an extension of you. And while providing value that someone is willing to pay for.
Yeah. I mean, that is like, that's the equation right there.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to do something. You have to,
it's
be able to help. And it is unfortunate. I mean, I'm deep in binge watching the Australian Bachelor and Bachelorette seasons right now. I don't know why. It's terrible. But if I could get paid to do that, I would be the happiest person on the face of the planet.
Wouldn't that be amazing?
It's never going to happen. Like nobody gives a shit about my opinion about the Australian Bachelor. They should. They don't.
They should. Now, if you had a podcast about the Australian Bachelor and just about the Australian Bachelor and went deep, I mean, I listened to a podcast called Bitch Sesh, which is a Real Housewives breakdown podcast. And it's two comedians, Casey Wilson and Danielle Schneider. And they are great and entertaining and hilarious. And they've made it their job. They're also actors, but I think they probably make more. That's not a steady business. They probably make more from their podcast. They've gotten sponsors. They have huge, big fans. So they've found a way to monetize doing what they just feel like doing. Anyway.
I want to give them a round of applause. I mean, so let's just say that's the end of the line. Like once we figure out how to monetize watching TV and talking about it, like we can, like I can die, that's it. Like I did it. I did it. Congratulations. In the meantime, figure out how to provide some value, because people aren't going to pay you for your opinion on Real Housewife and The Bachelor. But put it together with who you are. And those two pieces are not mutually exclusive. And that is what I have learned from you that I don't think enough people are talking about. You can provide value even as a therapist, right?
Yes.
And I work with a lot of therapists in my business coaching practice. And this is a really hard conversation for them because they're so, it's so ingrained that you are not allowed to show up in the work. It's a conversation for another day. But if a therapist can do it, if I could figure out how to show up 100% as myself, as a therapist, while abiding by the 3,000 ethical and legal restrictions that are placed on me, like anybody can figure this out. So tell us about the 3 V's for getting paid to be yourself. This is a little model you have created to help people like break this down and make it actionable in their business.
Yeah. And so these don't really cover copy in a way. They assume that you already have that nailed. But the first V, volume, is about being prolific, about writing in this sense that we're talking about writing prolifically, creating prolifically. I like to apply it to writing, just generating volumes and volumes of work, because that is how you create lots of great stuff. So I always quote Seth Godin when I'm talking about this one, because he says that 50% of his blog posts, and he's written, I think, 85,000 of them, 8,500. I forget the number. It's just some outrageous number of blog posts in his life, in his career. He says that 50% of them are below average. And he's not saying that he's a lame writer. He's saying that is what average means. That's the nature of averages. It's math. 50% are below average. 50% are above average. So if you want to create more above average stuff that feels like you, because then that's how you get the hang of being you in what you create, then you have to create more, create consistently, create frequently. And this has helped me a ton, especially when it comes to writing emails, going from writing once a week to writing 3 times a week, not just because that sells more and doubled the revenue I was getting from just incidental sales from my emails, but because it allows me to go deep on little things. I don't have a ton of ideas swimming in my head every time I sit down to write, or feel like I have to catch everyone up on everything, or think of something big and epic. I know that I can just dash off something small, a small story, a thought, go deep on the little things, tell a whole story about my husband getting mad that I forgot to buy the basil at the supermarket. Rather
That's
than
a great
telling.
story.
Thank you. Yeah. It was, and it was one of those things that came out of the pressure just to create something that day. Like I promised I'd write something today. I don't have anything to write, but I will. The best stuff comes when you don't have any ideas. That's what I think. So that's volume. And then the next one is visibility. And that's something that I'm working on all the time and didn't really get into or see the value of until a couple of years ago. And once I started, I was like, oh, this really works, which is getting on, how about summits like this, or producing a summit? This is great for your visibility, getting on podcasts, being in the media, getting guest posts in publications, and speaking on stages, getting your face out there so that people see you, and it makes you top of mind. It gives the impression that you are killing it. And the more you give the impression that you're killing it, then before you know it, you are killing it, because people perceive you as killing it and they want to work with you and pay you money, and then you're killing it.
Yeah.
So
it's not magic.
No, it's not magic. And yet it is. It is magic. It's made an incredible difference in my business. And I used to hide behind my copy. I didn't feel like doing a photo shoot. I didn't have any pictures of me on my site. There was like one little one buried on the about page that everyone used. And it was, people would say, why aren't there pictures of you all over your site? And I'm like, I don't want to be one of those people. It's not about me. It's about the client. It's about the copy. I want to be a blank canvas, which you know all about, tabula rasa, from being a therapist. And once I made that shift into like, okay, I'm going to put my face everywhere. It made a huge difference in my business, and people now know who I am.
Yeah.
and
Okay.
know that I am talking shrimp, like Laura Belgray equals talking shrimp. And
Yeah.
it's made a name for me.
Well, before we talk about the third V, I just want to
Mhm.
circle back to something you said a minute ago, because it does feel
Yeah.
really crucial. And you said, these three Vs assume you kind of have your copy already figured out. And maybe another
Yeah.
way to think about that is like you have your messaging figured out,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
You know what you're about, you know what you stand for, you kind of understand. You don't have to have it fully figured out, but you at least have a working framework for the relationship between the value you offer and who you are. And then you can blow things up by being prolific.
Well, I will
So what do you
stop you
think?
there and
Yes,
say
please.
yes and no.
Mhm.
Because so when I said this assumes that you have copy figured out, all that I mean by that is that you know how to write like yourself in your voice.
Okay.
And that's a whole skill. But I like to remind everyone that conversational is the new professional,
Yeah.
that you don't want to mistake, you don't want to confuse formal for professional. You want to be informal and intimate in your language and think of it as copy talking instead of copywriting. And that's going to help a lot. When it comes to having your message figured out, I actually don't think that you need to have it all figured out in order to do this. I think that this is what creates your messaging. So
Yeah.
you might not know what your message is. And that stops a lot of people. Like, well, I don't know what to talk about.
Yeah.
Start talking, and you will start seeing, first of all, you do it in volume and you do it publicly, and people will start reflecting back to you things that you said, just as you're doing with me right now. You're like, oh, I want to quote you on that thing. I'm like, oh, I didn't know that landed so well. Okay, I'll make that part of my message. So you start, I think you actually figure out your messaging as you go. You do that by being prolific. It starts to emerge, and so does your voice. Your voice starts to emerge the more prolific you are and the more public facing you are with what you have to say. The more audience you build and the more people who you interact with and engage with while you're delivering that message, they reflect it back to you, and then it becomes your message. So I think that it's actually a great way to figure out what you have to say is by talking and throwing stuff out there.
That's huge. And that's so helpful. And you're the only person I know of at this moment in time who's saying that, because I do feel like the message is predominantly like figure out, figure out. You can't get big until you know what your message is. But as soon as you said that, I'm thinking, yeah, like last year for me was all about just go on podcasts and have conversations and see what shows up. And then like, that's your thing. And that is totally how it unfolded. And if I would have waited to try to get on those podcasts, to try to be visible until I had it all figured out, I would still be sitting on my couch.
Yeah.
About doing it and not doing it. So that is tremendously helpful. Okay. And how does the third V fit into this figuring out who you are and blowing up?
Yeah, it fits in everywhere because the third V is velocity, as in speed, momentum. Slap things up. Don't sit around and marinate on ideas. I am a marinator. This is not my strong suit by any means. It's just something that I have to work on. So, I mean, my nature, it's in my nature to have an idea and then, test the waters, like see what my friends think of that idea, see what my colleagues think of that idea, mention it to everyone, Voxer everyone. What do you think of this? Have them say, it's amazing. You should do it. Why haven't you already done it? Yeah, I'm going to do it. I just have to get it right, get the idea right. And then by the time I think about doing it, actually think about doing it, someone else has done it.
Right.
So we don't want that. And that's something that I fight all the time. And I've seen the benefit of just slapping shit up. Of trying something and I used to wait for like, what's my big idea? What's going to be my big thing that makes a huge splash and makes me $1 million, that makes me millions and millions of dollars. It can't be this little copy thing. So I'm not going to do that. And then once I started selling little things, those gave me the ideas for the bigger things. And once I had pressure, a lot of the pressure to create things has come from promising them, say as a bonus, if like at being an affiliate and promising things as a bonus, I'm going to create that. And that way there's no, oh no, what if nobody likes it? I already know they like it. I already know they want it because they have signed up through me for that bonus and I have to deliver it. And so I create it. And that's how Inbox Hero was created, for instance, as a bonus. And then I sold it. and it worked so well. And probably, it would have taken me 10 years, 20 years to actually get around to doing it and creating it if I hadn't had that, that time pressure.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that I did. And, I wouldn't know you if I hadn't just said, okay, fine, I'm doing a mastermind, I'm doing a mentoring, I'm doing a group program. Here's what it is, and put it up and sold it. And then I had to create it. And that is Shrimp Club.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's not naturally my style, but I put the pressure on myself and, came up with Shrimp Club. I didn't know how to run a group program. Like, okay, I'll figure it out, and did. And so the best things that I've done have come from doing them with velocity, with just doing them fast.
I feel like you're giving everyone listening to this a permission slip to be messy and to just like take a stab at it. And it feels parallel to me to what you were saying earlier about copy talking, right? The shift away from, professionalism to showing up in a more conversational way. I think it parallels the shift from perfectionism to showing up, with more authenticity, which is like, hey, I'm going to just take a stab at doing this thing. Maybe, I'm going to have professionalism in the way I show up and deliver, and I'm going to do what I say I'm going to do. But I'm also going to let you see that this is a process that's unfolding. And I think there's just a lot of power in giving ourselves permission to do what feels right and to experiment and for it not to have to be perfect all the time.
Absolutely. And most of the things that we are grateful for that are out in the world, like that we consume, we're like, oh my gosh, thank goodness this exists, whether it's a favorite podcast or TV show or whatever. There's someone behind that who didn't want to do it, who didn't think they were ready, who almost didn't. I mean, I just listened to Pat Flynn in a Clubhouse room. He has the podcast Smart Passive Income, and it's huge. And he was saying he just reached 65 million downloads. And he was talking about how when he started, like he told everyone in 2008 that he was going to do a show. And then he didn't release the first episode until 2010 because he was just like, oh, I'm an introvert. I don't want to put myself out there. It's not going to be that good. I don't really know. He had all those doubts about it. And I think a lot of perfectionism that almost stopped him from doing it. And now today he has a very well-known, incredibly well-known podcast in the entrepreneur space. And it almost didn't exist.
You just have to do it.
Yeah.
And do it as yourself.
Right.
Well, Laura, we will start wrapping up. This conversation has been so good. And I'm just sitting here thinking, I didn't think about this before we started this conversation today, but I hope that there's like one person minimum who listens to this conversation and has the same epiphany that you sparked for me 3 years ago, because what you're doing, what you're saying, the permission that you're giving people to do things in a way that feels good for them, in a way that makes them happy is really transformative. And I do think it is the heart of having a burnout proof business. So thank you so much for being here, for sharing your wisdom. And I have one more question for you before we go.
All right.
It's a little question I'm asking everybody. I want to know now, today in your business, how do you know personally when it's time to take a break from your business, when you need to just step away from things for a while? And what is your favorite way to rest?
I know when it's time to step away a little bit when I start to feel like I want to quit. When it starts feeling relentless and I start hating it and start hating everyone in my industry and am just bored and disgusted, and all the words that come out of my mouth are, I'm bored. I'm bored of this. I hate you all. I start saying those things out loud to the screen. Then I know it's time for at least a little break. And I've done myself a disservice in the past year of not taking a real vacation because vacations were canceled, and I should have taken, like when I had a chance, an actual vacation. And it's hard to make myself do that. Not because I feel guilty ever. I never feel guilty.
I love this
resting. Yeah, I don't understand that emphasis to like always be working as an ethic I feel ashamed when I'm working too hard. I really do. I feel embarrassed. Like if I get caught working too hard. But sometimes I do work too hard because there is work to do, because I have all these things that I have to do that I've committed to for myself. And also because I like making a buck, and I'm like, I'm going to lose money if I don't do that. And I hate losing money. I hate not making the money. So my favorite, I think that's when it's time, when I'm like muttering at my screen, and when the words are swimming in front of me and I just can't look at it. And I like, it's, first of all, I do take off and go for a walk every day. And sometimes it's like just when I need to. It's like I've got to step away and go for a walk, and that kind of changes the scene. Or sometimes getting in the shower. I know everyone says that, but I really love getting in the shower. It makes me feel, it's the one place where I can't look at a screen.
Yes.
I know I could put one of those things in my shower, like a plastic covered, and never. Yeah. No, it's the only
off
place
limits.
I can't look. Off limits. That, and when I get my eyelashes done, which I haven't done in a year, but that's the other only place where I'm not looking at a screen. I do listen to podcasts while I'm doing that. But my favorite way to rest is watching TV. That's it. I mean, watching whatever it is, binge watching. Really, I love watching some garbage. But really, my favorite way to rest is watching something that I'm obsessed with, that I'm binging in a good way. I mean, to me, it's always good. If I'm obsessed with something, it's good. I can't, when it's not myself. That's a strain. But when it's a TV show, when it's on, Netflix, HBO, or whatever, and I can't stop thinking about it, that is my favorite feeling, when I can't wait to get back to it. And like, oh, I have another episode. Yeah. It's just the best. And it's so sad when the binge ends. And I'm just like right now in between shows, and it's tough.
Well, I mean, just for fun, what's the last great thing that you watched?
I always come back lately to Kingdom. I mean, there was Queen's Gambit. I love that. That gave me a great feeling. But this year I rewatched Kingdom for probably the third time. It's a series. It's now on Netflix. Not a lot of people know about it. It was like created on DirecTV or something. And it's the one with Nick Jonas in it. If you're looking for Kingdom and you're like, is it this one? Is it this one? Is it Animal Kingdom? No, it's Kingdom with Nick Jonas. That's all you have to know. And it's so good. And I am still obsessed with it.
Well, thank you for giving me something to do this weekend. I have a feeling many people will find this recommendation to be the most helpful part of our entire conversation.
Yeah, probably.
Because we're all running out of things to watch in this pandemic. That's awesome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing when you know you need to walk away. And I totally agree. I think I've learned to ask myself, am I bored or am I burning out? Because I'm not actually bored. Like, this is all very fascinating to me and I enjoy it. But if I'm teetering on burnout, I get irritable, I get super bored, everything starts swimming. Yes, just that sense of like, whoa, like, get me away from this. Right. And so just love reflecting that back so people can kind of check in and just be curious about, like, does that show up for you? And could you maybe notice that take that as an invitation for you to step away and binge watch Kingdom, which is definitely what I'll be doing after this conversation. So Laura, thank you again for being here.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure talking with you. And for everyone listening who aren't on your email list yet, I highly recommend that you jump on the Talking Shrimp email list. It is the best email list on the internet. That is non-negotiable. Yes. And to sweeten the deal, Laura has created a free guide, the 33 non-sucky subject lines for emails that always get opened. So we are going to include a link to that all over the place. So it's easy for you to jump in. And if this isn't an email, this interview,
could this have been an email?
If this interview landed for you, and I would love for you to let us know, and I will pass your words along to Laura, because it does feel really good to know that what we're saying, we're not just speaking into the void. Like, what we're saying is landing and it's making a difference in people's lives. So thank you again for being here.
I always love hearing that. So thank you for that reminder to your audience. And hey, tag us on Instagram, right? Yeah. Story it. story it, tag us on Instagram. I'm Talking Shrimp NYC on there.
Perfect.
And
we're going to plaster that next to everything too. So I love
Great.
that. Yes, I'll do it too. You know
Good.
me. I'm trying to make friends with Instagram, but you're much better at it.
You're good.
Okay.
You're good.
Well, we'll wrap up and thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
I hope you loved this conversation with Laura Belgray about getting paid to be yourself. If you'd like to learn more from Laura, you can grab her non-sucky subject lines freebie at talkingshrimp.com/subject lines. That's talkingshrimp.com/subject lines. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode of Deeply Rested. If you enjoyed this conversation, I would love to invite you to join the Deeply Rested weekly newsletter. You can sign up at deeplyrested.com/newsletter. I hope to meet you in my inbox very soon.